I'm Teresa Mc Bride. I work with ChangeMakers. It's a collaboration between Inishowen Development Partnership, Donegal ETB, Self-Help and Trócaire. We're based in Donegal, and it's a global citizenship education project applying the SDG framework with adults and community groups county-wide. I suppose very quickly, we adopt a multi-stakeholder and whole of community approach, which we feel is quite unique to us. So our engagement involves a wide range of actors in the community. So adults, community groups, third level institutes, the arts sector, social enterprises and the business sector. Also, we've recently started engaging with multinational companies in Letterkenny, which is a new engagement type for us. Just to kind of give you a bit of context, I suppose, about who we are. But on to the Bookless book club methodology. The methodology was brought to us by two of our really talented facilitators. We have a panel of facilitators across Donegal who we work with, Francine Blanchet-Breen and Annette Patton. And so why we wanted to do this, it was as ChangeMakers, we wanted to respond in some way globally to the Black Lives Matter global movement. And then also, I suppose, nationally and locally, year on year, increasing reports of racism and racially based crime and discrimination in Ireland, as well as locally here in Donegal. So for example, some of you may remember that in 2019, we had an appalling arson attack on a designated direct provision centre in my own hometown of Moville in Inishowen, County Donegal. So that's just a bit of the context. The methodology, so as the name suggests, it's modelled on a traditional book club, but without books. Instead, we use film, poetry and music to explore racism and racial inequality with participants. They sign up to 4 weekly evening sessions that run consecutively, and they're about sort of roughly 1.5 to 2 hours each kind of time commitment over the 4 weeks. And I suppose the methodology is underpinned by a desire to achieve a more of a values-based engagement and response from participants. So I suppose, you know, what Richard was presenting earlier is really important to have hard data around inequality. But our approach was more sort of trying to go beyond knowledge on stats and figures, and to kind of engage people on a deeper level through, you know, different forms of art. The sessions themselves, we had 8 participants sign up, all women, but from a range of different ages, from a woman in her 80s to a college student. So it was quite an interesting intergenerational kind of conversation over the 4 weeks. The first session, we set about laying the ground rules, so creating a safe space for people. People get to know each other, setting the rules for respectful discussion. And we showcased 2 short films. So the first one was A Silent Truth by Laura Flick, and a conversation with white people on race by New York Times. They have a series of about 26. I recommend, if you haven't already, to go there. It's a great resource if you want to use short films to explore racial inequality and the Black Lives Matter movement. And here's just a short snippet from one of them, just to give you a sense. So the second session, we also used another New York Times film, which is a conversation about growing up Black. The third session, we started to look at poetry and used a poem by Thomas King, I Am Not the Indian You Had in Mind, which explores stereotypes. And interestingly as well, allowed participants to look at intersectionality between, you know, gender and ethnicity. The fourth and final session, then we used music. And so we listened to Amazing Grace by John Newton, which has a special connection to Buncrana here in Inishowen, Donegal. And we had a discussion on the Atlantic slave trade and modern forms of slavery and forced labor. And we listened to Black Rage by Lauryn Hill also. Both quickly, in the final evaluation, we asked the group, you know, what difference has it made to you over the 4 weeks? And we had examples of how it had impacted people both personally and professionally. So for example, from feeling more confident now to be able to challenge racist views among family and friends, to having influenced the work of one of the participants who was a writer. And that I just want to end very quickly with 3 key lessons that I wanted to share. I suppose the first big lesson for us is, you know, the nature of racism and the images and the discussion that people were engaging with. It's quite difficult and challenging, you know, for participants. And although it didn't arise in our sessions, there's also a huge potential for conflict when addressing inequality, not just racial inequality, but in all forms. Because I suppose we need to remember that, you know, to the privileged, equality can feel like oppression, and it's about power and that. So we had highly skilled facilitators for that, and that was critical. The second lesson, as mentioned earlier, we had an all-female club. We used an open call approach through our social media channels, but on reflection, when we went back as a group and tried to reflect, we felt, you know, we're not reaching maybe the harder to reach groups, the people we need to reach, with, you know, this sort of behavior change kind of approach. And we're discussing now looking at more targeted recruitment. So working with our partners and collaborators who maybe might work with men or might work with other groups in the community who we do want to engage. And you know, that's important. And then finally, just the potential for this Bookless book club methodology. The participants at the end said they really enjoyed the experience. Some of them had participated in some of our more traditional style workshops, and they said they really liked this because it sort of touched them and made them think in a different way, opened their minds in a different way. And they had given a couple of examples of other topics they thought that we could explore. So gender inequality and patriarchy, neoliberalism and capitalism and socioeconomic inequality, and many more. Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much for the opportunity to showcase.